I'm going to be tackling this coding task by following these 4 steps. So first, we'll need to update the word class to store the audio information for each word. After that, we'll need to update the way that the list of words are created. Following, we'll need to update the on-item click listener to play the correct sound file when an item is clicked on. And then lastly, for now I'm going to focus on the numbers activity, but then we're going to repeat the process for all our other categories. Now here in our word class, I want to start by adding an integer variable that we can use to store an audio resource ID. Now this will just be the resource ID that we reference where the actual audio file can be found. And notice here that I've called it m_audio_resource_id. Then I want to modify the word constructors to accept another input in order to set the audio field. So I'm going to add it to both constructors because all words will have to have an audio file, regardless of whether they have an image or not. Then I'm going to set the member variable m_audio_resource_id to be equal to the audio parameter that was passed in. Now every time you modify the constructor, remember to update the java.doc comment. That way, any other developers who are calling the constructor knows what inputs to pass in. Since we declare the audio variable to be private, we should create a public getter method, just like we created public methods for other classes in order to access the English and Miwok strings, as well as the image resource ID. So I'm going to make a public method here that returns an integer resource ID. And I'm going to name the method getAudioResourceID. There are going to be no input requirements, and the method will just return the private audio variable. Also, since it's a public method, I'm going to add a comment to the method just to clarify what the purpose of it is. Alright, so those were all the changes we need to make to the word class. So now we have a new private audio variable, and it's set via the 2 constructors. And we have a public method to access that variable. Alright, so that finished off our first step. And since we modified the word class constructors, we'll need to modify the places that we use those constructors. So for example, in the numbers activity, the family activity, and all the other activities. So there we need to change how the word objects are created. Now in the numbers activity, we created an array list of words, and each word was created with 3 arguments. So first the English word, the Miwok word, and then the image. Now we need to add a 4th argument, which will be the resource ID of the audio file that goes along with the word. So for the number 1, I'm going to add r.raw.number_1. And as you can see here, Android Studio is smart enough to automatically suggest the files that have been added to the raw folder already, just in case I forget what the resources were named. Now for the number 2, I'm going to add r.raw.number_2. So I'm going to copy and paste and make modifications for the rest of the 10 numbers. And this is what the code should look like when all the words have an audio resource ID. So the rest of the code in the numbers activity can continue using the words array list as before. Now I'm going to make the updates to the other categories so that they use the right constructor. Now when I open up a phrases activity, I see that there are errors showing up, and this is because that there are no valid word constructors for just 2 inputs anymore. So let's make some changes to get rid of these errors. So here's what the words list should look like when each word is using the correct 3 input constructor. Now remember, if the line of code exceeds 100 columns, we should wrap the text to the next line and then indent by 8 spaces. Also note here that the array list is now final. So I want to make similar changes to our family activity and our colors activity. And here's what the finished code looks like for the family activity and the colors activity. Alright, so now the word class has been updated, as well as the places that we call the word class constructor. Next, we're going to update the on-item click listener so that it plays the correct audio file. In the numbers activity, I need to modify the code for when a list item gets clicked on. So right now, we always play the same number1 MP3 file. Let's insert some code above it, but first we need to figure out which word is getting clicked on, and then store that in a variable. So from the on-item click method position parameter, I can check the words array list to get the word that was clicked on. So to do that, I can just call words.get and pass in the position variable. So this method will return a single word variable, and then I can go ahead and store that variable on the left-hand side here. Now if you get a red squiggle under here indicating an error, and the error says something like variable words is accessed from within an inner class needs to be declared final, remember that means that we need to declare the words array list as final. So double check that you have this set as final up here. So once I know what word was clicked on, I can get the audio resource ID of it and then pass that into the media player. So that means I can delete this r.raw.number_1 that we've hard-coded in here and just use word.getAudioResourceID. There we go, and that should work. So once the media player is created, we can start playing the audio file. Now I'm going to add in some comments as well here, so we remember what's going on. So that finished off our third step. Now the last step is to make sure that it works for the rest of the category activities. Now to make the family activity work, I copied over the media player variable, as well as the code for the set on item click listener. Remember that when you copy and paste, make sure to grab the final curly brace, closing parentheses, and semicolon too. Also, I made the words array list final, so that I could reference it within the item click listener. Now the media player needs to reference the activity context, so I changed it from the numbers activity to the family activity, because that's the activity that we're currently in. And then I repeated the same process for the colors class. And one more time for the phrases activity. Now hopefully after setting this up several times, you're getting the hang of setting up item click listeners as well as using the media player. Now let's demo the app, and we should be able to hear Andrea's voice for all the words. So let's start with phrases this time.
Oyase.
Nice. And then go into colors.
Topisu.
Sounds good so far. Now to family members.
Atta.
And lastly, our good old numbers activity.
Otiko.
Perfect. So I want to take a moment and congratulate you on all the hard work that you've done. So you've reached a really big milestone by incorporating all these features into this app, as well as learned so many new skills along the way. So take a moment and give yourselves a pat on the back, and then go show off your app to your friends and family. We're really proud of you, and you deserve it.